Hello, everybody. Jeff Allen here. And we're seeing so many posts on LinkedIn about work from home, the whole focus on that, remote working, telecommuting, whatever we're going to call this thing. And I saw the post this morning about the statement that the one of the there's the Sydney Morning Herald or the Sunday Morning Herald, looks like Sydney, that people are not searching for their dream job, they just want to work at home. And then someone responded to that. Let's see who has responded to this. It was Amelia Sordell responded that this is so depressing. Um, and so I want to talk about this. I mentioned in a post yesterday, the day before, but I want to summarize it in the video because I think it's a lot easier to understand it in the video and to understand to see the expressions and the gestures and all that. 75% of communication happens in visual format and not in words. So I said in my post my reply a couple days ago that there have been 4 times in my career, my studies in my career, where I've worked from home. And I want to mention those and explain them a little bit more, and how I think that applies to today's situation in our post-COVID lockdown kind of situation. So the first time in my studies and career was back when I was doing my master's and doctoral studies, because when I was doing actually my master's thesis in France, I'd finished all the courses and finished that and was working on the thesis, working from home because I wasn't going to the university. And then during my doctoral work, because my courses were waived because of my previous experience of having taught linguistics in kind of I had already been chair of the department for 25 years old. So they kind of waived all my courses and let me work on my thesis. And so I had a lot of time to do field work and to write my thesis while I was teaching. But I was given a lot of online phone courses for executives. So I was kind of working from home, but doing phone courses half the time, these telephone courses for executives. And I was able to stay at home and do my doctoral thesis, which was kind of convenient for me rather than to spend a lot of time commuting into Paris. That was my first experience, and that I was doing it by myself, right? My problem, my research. No one else involved, other than my informants, which I had to go do some trips in England and kind of do that. So that was my first experience. Then my second experience, where I worked from home for a significant period of time. I'm not talking about little, a day here and a day there, but actual telecommuting, remote work from home was when 2005, when my second son was born, and my wife at the time was bedridden at 5.5 months with an amniotic sac that was kind of broke. So I found she was in the hospital, bedridden, couldn't move, and could move to make sure that the baby would be able to be born in favorable conditions. And that I found myself with our 2.5-year-old adopted son in kind of a situation where we had already adopted him a year and a half before, and he had been with his mom all the time because I was traveling to work all the time. Paris, 4 hours a day in the train. And so I had to negotiate to actually work from home to be able to take care of him and only go to work once a week. And during some critical moments for that company, and my schedule seemed like emergency room, right? With all the Post-its everywhere. That was my life by myself. I had to deal with other people. I had to work with other people. We're going through a lot of mini audits. I was setting up mini audits to actually get a different whole audit schedule. We had to do this audit to keep our customers. So it was really important. And survive that for, I can't remember how many months we did it. It was maybe 4 to 6 months that I negotiated to do this. And we successfully got through the whole audits and turned that situation around. But my son was born. A little 1.5 kilos. He was kind of the biggest in his group of fellow brothers and sisters in the incubators. But he survived that, and we survived it, not without difficulty. So that was a period of 4 to 6 months. I haven't thought about exactly how many months it was, but it wasn't too short, but it wasn't too long. Then the third round of where I did remote work from home, and again, it did involve some colleagues, but a lot of the audits things I was doing, I could do by phone calls. So I could do mini audits by phone calls, which I did do in waiting rooms and at bus stations and train and metro stations, subway stations. So I was able to do mini audits, getting people to do their work and to explain what they're doing to prepare them for the audits. We were able to do that virtually for a part of it. Not all of it, but let's say that the days I went to Paris on the train, that day was a long day because I wanted to get as much done as I could with the people in person. Didn't waste a minute of that. So that kind of sets that scene. Then the third one was in 2010 when there was an earthquake in Haiti, and because I had developed the only existing speech-to-speech translation system in the world at Carnegie Mellon, before that we had to find a way to help save lives in Haiti. So I had to negotiate to work from home. Again, one day at work, a different employer, different situation. Couldn't say how long it would be. It ended up being a year. I ended up working at home for about a year, maybe 3/4 of a year. But one day a week, going to work, doing my job, and doing a lot of corporate social responsibility for a year that led to saving a lot of people's lives. That was pretty intensive for the family with 2 young kids under 10 years old. And it had the same kind of challenge that we've heard about people saying during the lockdown that they had with their families. So there were a lot of similar things back in 2010 that reflect what we've seen during the COVID lockdown, what people have said, about it. And then this current round, now again, that was working with a lot of volunteers that were distributed across different countries. It's not to say that I have never worked from distance. I've spent probably the past 15 plus years actually working with teams abroad. Some people I've never seen in person. But to say that the majority of the people I was working with at that period of time, especially volunteers in that kind of humanitarian aid crisis management, disaster relief situation, were volunteers I had never met and still have never met 12 years later, that it was crowdsourcing, making everybody work together. And I talked to Microsoft invited me to give me a Microsoft research lecture in 2010 about it. And I said it was one of the most complex projects I've worked on in my entire career, and it was a voluntary thing. That had its own challenges. It was completely remote on that part, except for one day a week, and a lot of the work I was doing during the week on top of it for my regular job was still virtual. But we had teams in Asia. I live in France, Paris. So we had teams in Asia, Korea, United States, England. Kind of thinking back then, those are the teams where they were. So it had to be done virtually anyways. But that just enhanced the situation. And I was able to work from home rather than working from the office. I was working from several teams in Paris, but that was kind of the minority of the teams. So it all worked, and it happened, and it worked out. Again, with family challenges. Then the current situation is that when COVID hit, I was also, from 2013 onward, at work, I've been in the pilot team for working from home 1 day a week to 2 days a week. I was in the pilot team with that, so that worked out pretty well. and then 1 day a week, and then we kind of changed it to 2 days a week. They actually implemented across the company, and I can't remember, a few years back, just before COVID, and then it went to kind of 2 days, a second day a week optional. That you had to log in the time on working from home, and then COVID hit, right, and then the lockdown, and so that's since March 2020 on, actually February for me, because we foresaw the problem. And so I've been in this working from home kind of context since February of 2020, and now we're November of 2022. And and we do have a situation where we're a big company, flex work, this whole thing, pledge to flex and all that. So it's been it's been I don't have to go into work every day, and I'm able to, most of my team, the people that sit in the same area, don't come in. So, except for when we want it, but we don't all work in the same projects, right? So the people that work in the same projects want to come in at least 1 day a week. But I work on pretty much with people abroad, in many other countries than those I've cited. I mean, even more. So what I do is virtual in essence. All the projects I work on. So that has bearing on doing it, because why go into an office if what you're gonna do there and spend 4 hours a day in trains and subways to go and just connect on Zoom and Microsoft Teams to talk to people abroad. Same situation. So it's kind of, makes sense. It's just a lot of traveling time for nothing. So how does it come into this? I've been explaining this 4 or 5 different contexts, which are all different, but have a lot of similar traits. And how does that reflect to today's situation of what has working from home come to? And I've been watching how others have gone through this. Others have not done this. They've usually worked in teams. They've had a lot of people, especially I work for a central organization, a central tool. So there are a lot of people that work in Germany. So they all kind of know each other and work together. And that kind of is a difficult situation for the company. I'd never really done this before, this working from home thing. And what I've noticed, kind of some traits, and I'll come to it a little bit more here. I've seen a lot of the people that have not done the working from home on a consistent, regular basis for a long period of time. I found that they don't update their communications tools. That is, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, or what do you want? They don't change the status. So if the tool doesn't automatically turn to away status within a couple minutes, it stays as available. And you think they're available, so you try to call them, and they're not there. And that gets kind of frustrating because you're trying to do things in this normally you just kind of walk down in a room. You'd walk just across the kind of the room and go talk to somebody directly, or you walk down the hall. You go to another floor and talk to somebody and get things done, right? I don't send emails. I just go do it, because that's the way that you get a lot of things done quickly. But when I'm on site, but this turned it into a situation where people's availability was awkward, or the problem was that they would be on a different device, a different phone available, but the one that the system says, like Skype or Skype for Business or whatever, it says they're available, but they're not available because they're on another device, because all these devices aren't interconnected to say that you might be busy on another device, right? So that's been kind of one problematic thing in communication, to have people work together, because people don't seem like they're available. They're not available, but they seem like they're available. So that's been problematic. And so that means communication is lowered, reduced, and it makes teamwork difficult. And then you got to set up more meetings. Got to set more meetings to get people you got to set up meetings to just get to talk, which gets frustrating. Because people are so much more busy, because they're totally busy, because they're doing the way that they're kind of functioning is this way. So that creates more slots being filled up in their calendar. And you got to plan further ahead, and then you'd normally just walk across the room and talk to them for a minute, right? Really a minute or two. So to figure, so that's kind of been, I think, a really key thing. A second thing that I've seen is that people have tried to adjust that we're not used to doing this before, because it put the lockdown actually put them in a situation where the kids are at home too. Kind of depends. And in some countries, the kids were there even longer. So that stress in the family created situations where people would actually work. They would create their work schedule around their family schedule, and it's kind of interesting because I've worked in the translation field too, the translation service field, where freelancers are very common. So that's virtual working in this field is actually quite common, in an outsourced kind of situation. So people, but they don't work full time. It kind of depends. So that's a little bit flexible. But when you're working in teams that are used to working in-house, and then they get thrown into the situation, and then they turn it seems, I can't say this for sure, but it seems that they turned it to where the work schedule has to adapt to the family schedule to take care of kids and to do all that. Whereas they somehow did it before in some way, but maybe kids are at school. But but that kind of it set a situation up where which I could say could be a recipe for disaster. Not quite, but what it does is it sets a situation where work is secondary, or doing productive work is secondary to the home situation happening. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying the results of it is that the productivity is reduced. Add that communication problem in it, and you can't reach people. It's kind of, this gets really, the productivity is lowered. And this has been ongoing for 2.5 years now. So I'm not saying with everybody. I'm just saying I've seen it across a number of people, and I've seen. I start with the cough, but I'm coming out of a fit of bronchitis. But the thing here is it's really turned into this thing. Now add to this cultural differences. I mean, I've been working on these free video books on my YouTube channel, working with the Germans, working with the French, working with the Americans, working with Caribbeans, working with Africans, working with Chinese, working with the Indians from India. And I've been mentioning a number of traits that you see in these different cultures. And the concept of time is different. Time and how time is valued is very different. The concept of hierarchy and the concept of being to process things versus results is very different across different cultures, and those are just a few. Hierarchy can be called power distance, but all kinds of things. And all this comes into play of how people value time. Time is one critical factor, and how do you value time and collaboration, all that. And value systems are very different across cultures. And so you can have a lot of conflict coming about because people are doing things differently in this remote work situation of how they use their time and how they use the time in certain ways. And so it creates I would say, a significant amount of conflict, of teamwork conflict, when you have to actually work in teams and do things together and get things done to prove that you're doing accomplished things, you're achieving your achievements. This creates, because you want to show value. In the end, you want to show value, so you get more, you get more visibility, and then you can get more people to help you do your work. If you can't prove you're doing work productively and efficiently and streamlining it and actually doing a lot done, then you're not going to get more people to help you do the work, right? This all comes into play. So, and I'm not saying work from home is negative. I've had very positive experiences with it. But I've also been one, I think that I've also been one that has been very careful in how I do it and use it. And when I do it, I'm extremely productive. And yes, I work hard. Some people call me a workaholic. I don't call that. I just like what I do. I like to do what I do. And I actually I actually paid for my college education. I worked for it. So I want to do what I want to do. And my college and university stuff is what I decided I wanted to do. Parents decided before. And I'm American too, so that kind of, happened. But I live in a French culture, which is really different. So, and married a French girl too. So there's a lot of, cultural differences that I live both worlds. And so I think this is, but at least for the work from home situation thing, or I don't want to say work from home, remote working, because home can be different things, right? So, um, sitting in a parked car can be working from home. Or I remember when I was taking care of my child when my wife had been bedridden, I would take him to the local daycare center one morning a week, right? And I would go and work on the riverside with a phone and a computer. That's working from home, right? So just on the river next to the daycare center, to him to be taken care of for a few hours and take him home and take him for lunch. And so working from home is kind of remote working. So all this, I think, I've been thinking about this along with the whole great resignation wave of people deciding that they want to not work for people if they can't work from home 100%, right? I've been watching that. And then I've been watching the great remorse, where the companies start downsizing because they don't need to have the buildings anymore and they don't need to have people. And then we're watching this happen. And I've been thinking for a number of months, maybe a year and a half, that this would turn into this focus on working from home or remote working and wanting to have everything remote work. And even you won't go to work unless you won't even relocate. You won't do anything. Which we used to do this, right? We'd relocate for a job. And now people don't want to relocate. They just want to work from home and refusing to take jobs. And I've been thinking about that. I think that this is going to turn into a difficult situation for a lot of people. And now we're seeing it. Now we're seeing it happen. And now I'm not saying that working from home or remote working doesn't have positive benefits. I think it has positive benefits to those that figure out how to do it and don't overdo it, right? I think that there are some jobs where you can't really do this efficiently. I think for sales jobs, there's the phone sales, cold calling part of it, and then there's going and visiting customers and prospects. And I think the visiting customers and prospects, and I've done it, right? I've been a director of sales. You go out in a suit and you visit because it's all personal, right? And you can only do so much of this in Zoom. Because a lot of it is relation. Well, depending where you're doing it. I was director of sales in France, right? So relationships is important. It's different than if I was doing it probably in the States, where it's more transaction. So I think it really depends on culture as well. And I don't think there's a one size fits all situation kind of answer to all of this. But I think that it will be interesting to see how this, I say interesting, to see how this unfolds over time. But I think that there's going to be a wake-up call to this. And I think that companies will have to make decisions. They'll have to make decisions to downsize because their workforce, they're not using their buildings anymore. I think that I've seen this happen in many companies. I think that there are going to be a lot of things, and I don't want to go into all the details because I've been talking for 24 minutes, right? So this is a lot. But I think this is really key to consider for the future of work. What will the next generation work? And the kids have grown up in this, right? All the young kids are growing up in the middle of this, and they're seeing this, and they're seeing the struggles that their families go through. Whereas before, the struggles of parents just got to figure out how to do the babysitting and the school and all that. Now it's how to juggle things at home. And I think that this will be something that unfolds over time. It will evolve. But I think that people need to accept that they're going to have to come back. to a certain extent. It needs to be at least hybrid or flex or what do you want to call it. And I think that some jobs just cannot do it. Part-time even doesn't quite work. I mean, sales jobs, if I was doing sales, I would probably have to be back home or working at the office a lot more. Kind of depends, right? But I think there are roles that are more conducive to working from home than others. So over to you, to the comments and all that. Thank you so much for listening for so long to a few anecdotes and stories about what I think about it. Thanks.